Hey everybody, I'm back. I know just recently wrapped up a Fantastic Four comic, but I really want to get this one out really quick because I've been wanting to get back into reading some Hellboy, and I figured I'll choose a shorter one. There was another one I really want to talk about, but I'll probably say that for next time. But here, I thought this a little bit more interesting, and at the same time, uh, very short and sweet. So it's Hellboy in Love, written by Mike Mignola and art by Mike Mignola, obviously. Uh, and this is because Hellboy's very old, so this is set in 1979, which I kind of dig. Was kind of confusing. You get a little cameo appearance with Abe Sapien and Liz, and honestly, you can make the argument for Abe, but Liz shouldn't even be here, or at least not even born yet. If they established is 1979, so that means she shouldn't even be born yet. She probably got at least a good handful of years before she is conceived, because she was like a young adult in like the early 2000s, set if you're set in the movie times. But like I said, it's only a cameo, it's not a huge deal, but it's just like, okay, this doesn't line up with the time period. But I like this here because this is like I don't know, Hellboy's kind of like high school kind of time. He's like you know sowing his wild oats, essentially. Well, I wouldn't say sowing his wild oats, but it's just like he met some, like he had like a genuine love connection kind of situation. You meet somebody and you just like they get each other. We all come across that kind of stuff at least once or twice in our lives. But anyway, it's called it's 5 issues. First 2 issues is establishing uh, the meetup on this particular adventure with this woman Anastasia, who Hellboy will be falling for, and she and she kind of make it obvious she is into him, which it's very rare you see like a woman this direct about it. But then so we got just 2 issue adventure here in the first 2 issues. Then issues 3 and 4 is a different adventure, and then kind of all kind of wraps up by the last issue. So Hellboy is asked, well, the British Museum, or I'm pretty sure it's the British Museum, because Anastasia, works for them. She's kind of like an archaeologist, and not kind of. I think she is an archaeologist. But anyway, for the sake of for the second time, I'm just gonna call her archaeologist. So the British Museum has some connections to the BPRD, and they request Hellboy to come look after this mysterious artifact that was uh, uh, was dug up and is in a suitcase, and they are worried about any potential dangers trying to abscond with it. And Hellboy is just on this train with Anastasia, making sure that nobody try to take the artifact. And it's always amazing. I gotta say, unlike in the movies, it's almost, and that's where because I like the Ron Perlman Hellboy films a lot. However, unlike the comics, the movies kind of make it seem like, well, it's kind of more realistic. Let's be frank. That somebody who looks like Hellboy should garner more of like a freak out with people. That's like, and that was the whole main one of the main beats of the first film. You know, I did like a Hellboy comic review before. I don't think I brought this up, but it's just okay. Uh, the professor who found Hellboy in the 40s as a baby, uh, and mind you, he has longevity, so like he aged much slower. So that's why he probably, like kind of like at this point in time, maybe like late teens, early 20s, or something like that in 1979. Who knows? But anyway, uh, the professor. Crap! I lost my train of thought. I was about to make a point. Oh, all right. The professor in the first film wanted to, went out of his way to make sure, like, he doesn't get ostracized or anything like that, because the people aren't ready to see him out and about. But in the comics, maybe in the early days of Hellboy comics, that was like a thing. I don't know, but from times when I've just picked up a Hellboy comic, it's just, and Hellboy's been around for a good long time, it's just like people just wildly accept Hellboy. It's just like, even though the BPRD is supposed to be like very like kind of like MI6. I mean, you might know of it, but you don't know like the total ins and out of it kind of thing. And as people just see somebody like Hellboy just walking around, like as I go through this story, he just going to walking up to people and they just casually talk with him. It's like, you didn't notice a guy big red with a stone hand and a tail with hooves, and you're just casually having a conversation with him. It's not really a big deal. It's like if you don't know anything about, like, let's say like you're living in Colombia and like one of the shanty towns or something like that, and you see somebody like Hellboy walking up, your first instinct will be shouting like, what the F is that? Or, oh my God, a monster, or something like that, or just run. My first instinct wouldn't be just to casually walk up to something like that, because you don't know who this guy is, and he carries a big gun, which, by the way, now think about it, didn't really use in this comic, because he has this iconic gun that shoots specialty bullets dealing with supernatural threats. I just now dawned on me, because like I finished reading this yesterday, and it's like, wait a minute, he has not used that freaking gun. I don't think he actually carries it, unless maybe it's 1979. Maybe he gets that a little bit later, but it's still, I don't know. He has an iconic gun, kind of like RoboCop's iconic gun. It's just certain characters have like famous weapons. But anyway, I'm meandering right now, but I'm just saying, like, okay, I kind of expected more of a reaction to complete strangers who isn't in the know. Maybe these like special agents or certain like special interest groups might be familiar with Hellboy, so they don't get freaked out about it. But I don't know. It just seems like your common man who haven't seen, at the very least, not in person, somebody like Hellboy should get like more reaction. Anyway, so they're on the train and it gets like ambushed by some goblins who steal the suitcase with the artifact inside. Hellboy goes into action, but so does Anastasia, who is a very proactive woman, which is pretty cool. I mean, she's not like fake it. She's not fake about it. Unlike if certain characters were written today, it would make this girl like a super strong girl boss and screaming like you know cliche nonsense about Hellboy. It's like like, oh, you don't think I could take care of myself because I'm a woman, or anything? No, there's none of that crap. Thank God. I mean, I say that, but it's just like this maybe, a long time ago, or like in the 2000s. So it's like long before the days of like excessive wokeness. But it's just pleasing to see like a proactive female, in a story, but working alongside the main character without putting that character down, just to prove how Supergirl bossy she is. The man's get on the train and fight off some of the goblins, but they managed to hop off with the artifact, so they have to hop off the train to chase after them. Now, when I first chose this uh, comic to review, I swear I thought this entire story is going to be centered on this train. I'm not disappointed or anything like that. I was like, man, I thought that would be like a Murder on the Orient Express kind of situation. Like, them trying to find these goblins and stop them. And meanwhile, these two fall in love on this train headed to God knows where. That'd be a little bit more. Matter of fact, that'd probably be like a good Hellboy story. Now I'm thinking about it. So they commandeer a vehicle near this meadow, and they follow the trail into the city, where they follow a lead that goes into this building where there's punk rock band playing, and everybody's just like kind of like a good like party about it. And these small goblins is running inside, and people barely reacting. Even one of the goblins trying to blow a kiss at one of the punk rock girls. And it turns out these goblins were talking to this middleman guy, dish him so they could try to make that getaway. But they managed to capture one. And he says his name, blank on his name. Let's see, it was in the slide. Nah. I mean, it's probably like a different page that I don't have a slide for. But in any case, they use them to find like the hideout so they can try to reclaim the artifact. And meanwhile, because at first Hellboy and Anastasia were bickering. It's kind of classic kind of thing where like two people who clearly into each other, or at least their interest is peaked, but they started off bickering. But on this little road trip, Anastasia is making like these little subtle, well, not so subtle innuendos, or she starts mentioning about like, I got good judge of character with men and blah blah blah. Clearly she's got the hots for Hellboy. The goblin leads them to the hideout where they meet this guy up the road who's asking for like the password, and they have the goblin brings up about there's certain rules that y'all got to be together. If you come in separately, they're gonna look suspicious. But he managed to seemingly talk his way in. But the guy with the lantern takes them into a dark, misleads them into a dark forest where they are then chased by these ravens, headed by this kind of granny raven. So uh, the goblin tells them to run towards this tree up the hill where they got to run clockwise or counterclockwise 3 times in order to avoid being attacked by these crows. Of course, he didn't make it. That's probably why I didn't bother to learn his name, because he doesn't stick around for the entirety of the, adventure. But they managed to head up to the main building where they see that the item is being auctioned off by these creepy weirdos. So Anastasia starts making bets, and Hellboy is confused, but she says to play along. And I'm thinking, like, well, you kind of work for a museum. I'm pretty sure they got like a decent amount of cash that you can afford to pay for the artifact that technically you found. So they start making bets until they kind of just eventually outbid everybody. The goblins try to steal that case for the person who hired them, this guy with the glasses. But we also notice a old vampiric looking woman in the crowd. One of the panels hyperfixates on her, but she makes well, we'll see her again. But they managed to get the artifact. Oh yeah, and the guy was trying to make off with it for their boss, but because of the spell that's surrounding the building, anybody trying to make off with one of the items without, following the rules and making the purchase, they immediately turn to stone or a tree or something like that. Dude's frozen in place and he's not himself. So Anastasia holds Hellboy's hand and they make their way back to their hotel or back in town. So on the next adventure, where Anastasia and Hellboy go to the gala that's featuring these artifacts that was recently found, that will eventually be going on to exhibits. But Anastasia boss, like I said, this is probably like an appropriate reaction at the very least, where people crowd around him, want to like, hey, you mind if I touch your horns? And he's like, I'd rather you not. And so they're at least fascinated by him. It's kind of I don't say out of nowhere, but it's kind of like funny to see Hellboy in a tux. You don't see that very often. Very James Bond, which he makes a James Bond reference later, but just him doing this globe-trotting thing with this girl. Anastasia's boss pulls her to the side and says, like, this is kind of uncouth. He doesn't belong here, which upsets her. So she's like, F this. She grabs her boy. They end up leaving and going out to a local pub to drink their night away. But Hellboy gets a call from the professor, or technically his father, who says, like, well, good job, well done, but you're gonna have to make your way back home in the morning, catch a flight, because the BPRD has another assignment for you. But Hellboy kind of like, look, actually I'm thinking about taking a bit of a sabbatical for a minute before I head back. And of course, the dad was like, no, you can't do that. We need you back here immediately. And Hellboy, I won't say snaps, but he kind of like, just like putting out on front street, look, I'm not your kid anymore. It's like, the brutal can survive without me for a little bit longer, okay? I don't need you to guide me around like he used to. It's like I'm a big boy now. Like I want to have some time. And this is, like I said, I think this is Hellboy's in his late teens, early 20s, phase where, yeah, he spent most of his, you know, life fighting creatures and evil and all this stuff. He really probably hasn't in a while spent some time to himself. Maybe because he hasn't have anybody outside of the work where they can just hang out or just, I'm pretty sure Hellboy had some time off before, but I'm just saying like this is like a budding love. It's like, oh, I got a legit girl that's like really into me, and it was like, but you have Liz around, because that's the thing. Because apparently, him and Liz probably got, and there's always a thing where these two always end up, not always, but they get into it, so they both end up pushing each other away, and then is established by Abe that Hellboy and his dad, you know, are in a bit of a tiff as well. So this probably explains as to why he's giving such pushback on this. But, I'm not mad with Hellboy on this, because I imagine that he's as long as he's, living and uh, uh and the longevity he has, I imagine he's been like, dealing with all types of horrors in his line of work that was kind of forced upon him. I want to say forced, but thrust upon him. So not only he getting some much needed R&R, but he has a special someone to do it with. That's, isn't like intimidated by him, challenges him on stuff, and then sticking up for him. It's just like, and then you got the same obviously interest and isn't afraid to dive into dangers the same way as he does. It's just, she seems like a very ideal partner for him, a romantic partner. So Hellboy blew off the dad so he can spend more time with exploring this, particular situation. Then Anastasia suggests about this new adventure about these mysterious events happening in Turkey, where these shadow creatures, supposedly based on these two workers back in the day that constantly, you know, slacking off and telling jokes instead of going to work, that, because they did it so much, they end up getting hanged, and upon their death, their spirits were sealed into puppets. And they, telling the story about this whole ordeal, and now the ending ends with them dying. So now, seemingly, their vengeful spirits are attacking a dig site in Turkey. So the couple go, they check it out. And of course, Hellboy, for the first time, probably in a long time, he's in uncharted territory, because of all the creatures that he had faced before up until this point, not one of them were shadow creatures. So he doesn't know how to deal with that. But you'll think like, okay, call Abe Sapien or Liz, somebody at the bureau who can pull up any files regarding shadow creatures or something like that, and the best way to repel them, if not kill them, or kill them altogether. So he's sort of finding blind. Once again, it'll be helpful to have that special gun that you usually carry. So they go to the site, see all these creatures attacking, and then the duo interferes to try to save as much people as they can. But, here's the parallel part where you see uh, Liz and Avian. But once again, I can buy maybe uh, Abe because, like with Hellboy, he's probably aged very slowly, so he can possibly live around 1979. But she can't. She shouldn't even exist yet. Because give it a benefit of the doubt. Let's say, uh, for the most part, you probably born 1988. Let's just go with that. Uh, you are nearly a decade off. So I'm sorry I keep harping on that. It's kind of bugs me because I know my fair share of Hellboy stuff, and the fact that this seems so out of place to me is just probably an excuse to throw in Liz and Abe, but make the timeline make sense in order to make this feels right. But you can also, how about this? Not set in 1979, because that is probably a much easier fix. Uh, it gets on my skin a little bit. They didn't really bother to think about something like that because it doesn't, in my opinion, makes a whole lot of sense timeline wise. Why these two should be here right now. So, uh, uh, Hellboy and Anastasia go and see this puppeteer telling these spirit stories, but it makes them restless. I like the art design where you see their spirits like writhing in agony, unbeknownst to everybody else, but Hellboy, because he can actually see through a lot of the supernatural stuff, obviously. So as they fight, the crowd of people starts making their escape. A second here. Okay. So they end up chasing down this one of the spirits that were attacking the other diggers. So the duo follows the creature into the cave mouth, where he kind of dips off, but not before causing a collapse, which traps both Hellboy and Anastasia. But they end up waking up in the past. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, they can change. Since they don't know how to deal with those shadow creatures in their present time, how about we just deal with the main source of the problem? But the problem is, A, that will muck with time altogether, which you shouldn't do. But B, they just missed it because apparently not too long ago, the hanging already happened. So you're not meant to prevent anything. You're meant to save who you can, which the spirits who are in the past along with them, seeking out the puppeteer who's, the one who put them on a curse. Uh, um, Sorry, 1 second. So I'm a little out of it, as you can see, but it got enough mileage left in me to quickly do this review, because tomorrow I gotta get down to business with reviewing the last two movies of the month. It's almost Halloween. So in this kind of puppet style situation, Hellboy and Anastasia gets, you know, chased by the spirits, or at least the puppet spirits of the two workers. Now, how Hellboy and Anastasia gets turned to puppets? Well, the puppeteer is some kind of like mystic who put them on a curse because he was the one that cursed them. Why? Maybe out of sheer annoyance, because in life, they, according to the story, they were slackers. They either arguing or, making constant jokes instead of being back to work, which caused them to get like, arrested, caused like because of disturbance, I guess, and something, that built up. They went straight to just hanging them all together. I guess to try to motivate the others to not do what they did. And it ends up with what we got with the cursed spirits wreaking havoc, seeking out the person that did it to them, but he's long since dead. But one of the spirits managed to break out of the, let's call it side scroller. But Hellboy and Anastasia follow him, so they're back into like the real world. Uh, One of the ghosts, who actually is a little bit more benevolent than the other, tries to stop his friend because he still sees them as like close friends. But he just kind of just twisted after years of just living and dying in this whole puppet theatrics. As long as people remember it, they'll still do it. But as one of the workers gets free, he mortally wounds one of the professor who came along to make sure everything in the dig site is, all the problems is averted. So, the professor and Anastasia come up with an idea. Since they don't have any type of tools or any kind of knowledge on how to defeat these particular type of creatures. So Anastasia decides, okay, I got the next best thing. So even though we can't pull them out of this fictitious world, what they can do is make sure the ending is a lot more high spirits to hopefully allow these guys to finally rest in peace. That is the general hope. But personally, I think they didn't have the way to kind of solve this situation outside of out there in space, they'll figure it out, kind of thing. It's like, I kind of really wish they have like a hard line answer. But I guess some people like open ended kind of stuff. So you assume their spirits eventually rest after not hearing from any mysterious shadow creatures for days, leads to believe that everything might work out well. Looks like she ends it up with like some kind of she ends up, after they saved everybody, they go back to the hotel and they end up having sex. And I ain't gonna beat around the bush.
Phrasing?
So the next day, Hellboy, well, she asks about any kind of past relationship. Hellboy says, he was only married once, and he didn't realize until after he says I do's that she was some kind of creature of the night. So that obviously ended quickly. Then a knock comes to the door, and there's a different type of professor from India, I believe. And they ask both Hellboy and Anastasia down for a meal so he can discuss things with them, like the artifact, uh Anastasia is kind of like white whale that she's been looking for. That is the Santa Arta, was pretty much like a hub for all things mystical, whether it's alchemy, straight up magic, just a myriad of things under the supernatural, and that's what she was looking for. Uh, so they end up going to the dig site because he wanted the professor wanted Anastasia's expertise on the matter before any local authorities have to get involved, because as we learn from uh, YouTubers like Legal Eagle who cover this kind of thing, all the things that you like, at least most of the stuff that you see from the Indiana Jones film, is him desecrating a historical area or whatever. God, where I was going with this. Like I said, I'm kind of like, exhaustion is hitting me. Uh, the professor asks her help in this matter to decipher it. The etchings on this skull, which, like I said, is kind of like a philosopher's stone for different types of magical fields. But then, lo and behold, the woman that was at that auction turns out to be, like, I believe that's Hellboy's former fiance. I'm not sure, but it's just, I do know is that this is the woman who was already at the auction and decides, like, I want to take what I was seeking by force. So she created these like blood goblins. Once again, we're dealing with goblin-like creatures. So while the professor, Hellboy, and Anastasia try to fight them off, this woman is making her way to stealing this artifact, which Anastasia fell so abruptly. So she kind of leaves with what she came for. And she has to like stubbornly like let the thing go. It's very Indiana Jones, goblet. Crap, what do you call it? The Holy Grail kind of situation. And Indiana's dad's like, let it go, son. And that's her moment right here. She has to let it go. She has to let this creature, knowing full well she can't take this thing on in a fight, so she has no choice but to stand by and let this creature absconds with this artifact that she's been searching forever for. But at the very least, the creatures immediately kind of just explode, never to be seen, and the witch got what she wanted, but Anastasia's kind of stewing in it for a bit. But they got all their lives. But the professor's like, got some kind of battle wound because of those creatures attacking. And I'm just shocked that Hellboy, of all people, was having a tough time with this. Yeah, like I said, maybe he doesn't have his gun, but he still got a stone hand to whack those suckers away. And I also want to say, am I the only one who, whenever he reads a Hellboy comic, I'm always using Ron Perlman's voice whenever I hear the supposed voice of crap, am I meandering again? My apologies, guys. Like I said, I'm exhaustion's kind of creeping up on me. I thought, since it's short, I thought I can get it all done. Okay, here it is. The ghoulish woman makes off with the artifact, despite Anastasia, stewing about it. But she had to let it go because Hellboy is getting overwhelmed, even though that's what's getting back on track. Hellboy is Hellboy. He should be able to fight off these creatures without a problem. But maybe it's because it's the amount of them and it's kind of like a swarm situation. Normally he can fight them off, but he's worried about Anastasia, who's not sticking with them to help fend off these creatures, and the professor is wounded, so he won't last long, so he can't do everything by himself. But that should be like a red flag for him because it's like, Liz nor Abian would not let you fight off things by yourself if they can help it. And Anastasia didn't do it on purpose, but she had like a fixation. Like I said, the whole Moby Dick kind of situation. She's wants that artifact, but she had to swallow her pride and let it go to go stick with Hellboy, and that triggers something with Hellboy where she stay behind for him kind of thing, and she wanted that to study that artifact for the longest time, but she had to give it up for him, which shows like markers for like a solid person who genuinely loves him, even to the point of giving something up that you want more than anything. So I really like that. But who knows what happened to this lady creature who stole this artifact. You don't see her again, but maybe in a different Hellboy comic she makes an appearance. But definitely Hellboy knows her though. So the movie ends with the couple making their way back to the hotel, having I guess breakfast or something, just sipping tea or whatever. And they want to see if they can pursue this relationship. Even though, lady, by the time you're 40, he'll still look the same as he is. He might have like a different attitude and even more gruffer, but pretty much still the same. And I imagine how much that's gonna suck uh, if they, kept this relationship going. She would have died away of natural causes around like mid to late 90s, because like I said, she would have been like what, 20. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Like let's say she's 24 years old in 1979. By the time we even get to the 90s, uh that was like 2 decades. Yeah, she would have been like 44 years old. No, not 44 years old. That's like okay. I gotta do some freaking quick math really quick. Let's say it's like 1999. 19 years. Okay, so she would have been. Oh, wait a minute, no. She would be 24. That's what I'm saying. Like, no. What I want to know is like she was like crap. Oh, come on. This is like, I gotta do some freaking math, man. Why is no simple calculator I can just easily pull it up on my freaking computer? Okay, here you go. Let's say, 19. Sorry, I'm too curious. 1979 minus. So she, let's say she was 24 years old. She would have been born in 1955. So, mm, yeah, she would have been in her 40s. I was like, I knew I had the math right in my head. I just had to double check my work. So, yeah, by the time 1999, she would have been in her early 40s. Because she would have been born. I'm just guessing her age. She looked like she can easily be 24 years old in this comic. So by 1979, which they did establish in this story, so she would have been born around, let's say, 1955. So by the time we get to 1999 into the 2000s, which we established in like the movies, but the movies is a little further, so it's like the movie was like what, 2004, 2005. So yeah, she was still being in her mid 40s by the time we established the first movie. But he would have met Liz. I'm overthinking it, I know, but I'm saying like it doesn't make sense. Uh, so I'm thinking like she should be like a brittle old lady or something like that. But I don't. It's just like I don't know. Something about it kind of bothers me. Not the whole age gap or anything like that. But I'm just saying like the Liz part of it all. I kind of wish, and that's probably what concerns me, because this is pretty much the end of the story. Because I like it for just like this globetrotting Hellboy with a girl he, took an interest in the same field roughly, and they just, because she's very spontaneous. She's like, she get him out of his comfort zone and things of that sort. So he's pretty much like having a good time. Of course, a good Hellboy story is just him going to a particular area, dealing with some kind of supernatural mystery. Like I said, it would have been fun if they kind of truncated all this adventure on like a secluded location, like a train, with no way out kind of situation. But this is cool too, where it's kind of like a James Bond kind of situation. But I kind of wish it was just like this thing that somehow does, because clearly it doesn't end well, considering that he does have Liz here. Just shouldn't have just included. Mike should not include it. Maybe you just wanted like a one-off little love story here, but either there should have been Liz, or since you purposely made a mention it being 1979, do not include Liz at all. She should not be born yet. And Hellboy and her had like a solid relationship, but eventually had like a falling out, or maybe she, died on a job or something like that while he wasn't there, and maybe that kind of hardened his heart a little bit until he met Liz later. But the fact that you got Liz here kind of jumbles everything into like a chaotic mess. It's just like none of the ducks are lining up in a row. That's my biggest issue. I was like, because Liz is a great character and obviously Hellboy's main love interest. But yeah, sure, it's okay that these two, have like some kind of breakup. There's always like a thing with that, but they ultimately will end up together. But you throw this woman in, and it's like, okay, that's fine, because people tend to have like past relationships. That's fine, but you have this cameo, which I can't just write off as like, oh, that's nothing. It's like a one-off. No, this is not like how James Bond goes from girl to girl because the past girl he was in the previous movie died, or just don't bring her up. You could have done that since you're doing like a whole James Bond thing. It's just like, don't bring up Liz at all. You established in 1979, our context clues were just fill in the blanks like, oh, she's not born yet. So it's like, it's okay that he has this kind of, I won't say fling, but had like a different girlfriend in the past that just, either didn't go nowhere or she passed away for some myriad of reasons, whatever the case may be. But it's just like that part personally, as a Hellboy fan, that kind of personally kind of like, okay, this kind of mucks everything up. Like I know the whole entire, I know kind of meandering about like something that's so inconsequential on a short little story, but I'm just saying it I don't want to say the words it breaks canon, but it's just like, okay, don't, this is not like an DC Elseworld story. Clearly, like a lot of stuff that happens with Hellboy is kind of easily understood as all being canon. So you bringing up Liz in 1970 freaking 9, which does not make sense. I don't know. I wish, if you leave a comment below, let me know if it makes sense to you or not, because it doesn't really for me. But besides the Liz factor, this is a pretty solid story, but it's just like, I wish it was just a long arc of a story with trying to find this artifact. They kind of solved that in 2 issues, and it's just them going on a different adventure in another 2 issues. And the threats seem very benign. And you establish some kind of old flame, because it looked like the same woman that stole the artifact is the same woman that Hellboy said was like an ex-wife that he was like tricked into marrying kind of situation, but quickly, dealt with that right away once he, came to his senses. But it's just like, and then she kind of just ran off with the artifact. Okay, you have 5 issues. She could have been the main villain of this particular story. That an old ex-wife of Hellboy's is going after a particular artifact. She could have been the one who hired those goblins to retrieve it for her. And then along the way, Hellboy is traveling with this archaeologist, going, chasing after this artifact, dealing with, different creatures along the way as like, mini bosses or whatnot. Give Hellboy all his tools, like his gun, and she can, she doesn't need to be, Laura Croft or anything like that, but she can think on her feet and offer like like the brains of the outfit kind of situation, while Hellboy is the muscle, but he's not like a lumbering oaf either. But they established like a relationship on this adventure. They dealt with it pretty quick, but it's only 5 issues, so I guess it's okay. I mean, like they established a relationship pretty quick, but given this 5 issues, I guess it's okay. But that seems more linear. While it just seems like you're kind of jumbling together some uh uh what you call those, like vignettes of adventures with Hellboy instead of just like a 5 issue arc. And not that I didn't have fun reading this, but it's just like, okay, the whole shadow puppets. I could have took, like I said, he could have took that part out. I kind of got bored with that one. But them chasing these goblins, and okay, you establish that somebody's after this particular artifact. They get hired not by some weird guy that you don't even bring up, like that guy who at that auction who was chastising those goblins about like not letting them go get away with that artifact. Okay, who was that guy? Was he working for that ghoulish looking woman at the end? Don't know. Didn't bring it up. I said like I have fun with this, but now that I'm really diving into it, it's like, oh yeah, this is some holes here. Okay, because in my head I was like, okay, I can come up with a better arc with this. Yeah, sure. The premise: Hellboy finds love with not Liz but some other woman in his past. Okay, it's set in 1979. We can exclude the main supporting cast that we're familiar with because they're quite a bit of ways in the future. We're in like 1979, way past the whole situation with WW2 when Hellboy was found. And we're, just finishing up the whole ordeal with Vietnam. So right now we're in like a precarious era with Hellboy where he's, dealing with just supernatural creatures around the globe, and he runs into this, he got hired by, this British museum who has this archaeologist that him and her establish some kind of, budding relationship, and they take on these supernatural creatures who trying to prevent them from gathering this artifact. You can still keep the fact that, she is willing to let this thing go for the sake of Hellboy, to like Indiana Jones with the whole Holy Grail. And he's like, willing to give it up, this island that she sought after for a long time, for this man that she is, who she fell for throughout this adventure. And not letting it get away by via villain, but just falling into a crevice like the Holy Grail did. And but they team up together to stop this creature who's Hellboy's ex-wife and take her down and destroy her along the way. And then they kind of get this shot where they go back to the hotel, have a sip, finally, relax, have a sip of tea, and establish where things can go from here. And you get it ended that way. That's is how I could probably written, Hellboy in Love a little bit better. There's parts in here that, is rock solid, but it's just like, now that I'm picking apart, and it's like, yeah, this is kind of like, it kind of coming apart at the ends, or at the seams. But man, it seems like it piqued my interest, and I kind of wish it was like, they could have done a lot more with this. Especially somebody like Hellboy, man, he's such a cool character, he deserves better than this. It's not like a bad idea for a premise, but like the finer details is lacking. But anyway, that's that. It's gonna be a minute before I get into my next comic book review. It's gonna be some point next month. It's gonna be fun. Look forward to that. Don't know. Might. Do I have time, or at least do I have the energy? Well, I gotta give myself like a bit of time, because I want to get back to more Black Myth Wukong. At least a little bit. We'll see. And if I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. But in any case, that was Hellboy in Love. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Sorry that I was kind of trailing off here and there. Like I said, like I've been working all day, and I've been on my feet. So like, and I spent last night. If you watched my TikTok and Instagram, I went out to a concert last night, and by the time I got home, I only got a little bit of sleep. So all that in combination wasn't good. Uh, but I'm still wanting to make sure I at least get this comic review out before the month of October is over. Uh, but tomorrow I'll have two more movie reviews to wrap up Halloween month movie reviews. Uh, so they'll be fun. So look forward to those. And I might be able to squeeze in some Agatha all along on what time on Thursday? The last two episodes, because I got to go out on the for a Halloween bar crawl Thursday afternoon. I got to leave Thursday afternoon, so let me see. Okay, good. So yeah, I'll be able to like Wednesday, October 30th. The last two episodes of Agatha All Along will be out, so I can give my uh complete thoughts about the entire thing. Because I have some thoughts and I have some notes, so look forward to that. But anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Take care and happy Halloween, everybody. Peace.